Chief Cahill was the chief law enforcement officer on board the USS Princeton in 2004 during the Nimitz strike group Tic Tac UAP encounters. A UAP is something that means UFO. It's just the government's acronym for what we know to be UFOs. There was a report that came out last week. It was 9 full pages. My gosh, how long did it take them to put 9 pages together? But they say things that I find very, very puzzling. If you read the report, don't worry, 9 pages. Who would read it? It talks about if this is true, if these things, when we come down to it, they're going to fall into, well, I think they said one of 5 categories. You know, it's going to be weather balloons. It's going to be some sort of natural occurrence. It might be, you know, one of our planes or objects. It might be a foreign military's objects, or it'll go into a other bucket. Well, it's kind of the other bucket that I'm kind of interested in. And maybe Sean can give us some insight on this 9-page UAP report. Welcome, Chief Cahill. How are you?
Good morning, Glenn. It's good to be here.
Oh, you sound so serious. Gosh. We're going to kind of go a little bit. We're interested in UFOs, and I like to talk to people who are not interested in UFOs. And so you might be the perfect guy, because you talk to people who are UFO lovers. They want it to be true. I just want the truth. So can you help us find that?
Well, I can say that for the people who are disappointed in the 9-page UAPTF report, I would ask them to change their perception a little bit. The first aspect of that report was that it was to go to Congress. So the 9 pages, while I don't want to make it sound like a gift from Congress, I was quite happy that they immediately turned around and gave us the unclassified portion of it. Now, I'm like a lot of people, I'm most interested in what's in the classified annex, and there have been a lot of rumors that are circulating around about it. But there's a lot in that 9-page report that we can immediately dig into, and it harkens back to 2004 when I was on board Princeton. And it speaks a great deal. If we focused just on that Tic Tac case where I was present today, we would show a perfect example of why the UAPTF was formed and the kind of data that we're looking to deliver to not only our leaders, but to the American people. It's the real data.
Okay. So can you take us back to when you were on the Princeton and tell us what happened, that whole experience?
Yes, in 2004, when I was stationed on board Princeton as the chief law enforcement officer, what we call the chief master at arms in the Navy, I helped coordinate ship's movements over a period of days with Senior Chief Kevin Day down in the Combat Information Center. He had been picking up anomalous contacts on the Aegis radar system that were coming in at suborbital altitudes, then going down to 80,000 feet. And then what was spectacular was they were immediately translating down to sea level. And then there were groups of them proceeding in a southerly direction against the wind. This was so strange and worrisome to Kevin that he began a series of diagnostics. He and a radar tech named Kevin Voorhees both rebooted the system numerous times. They double-checked everything, triple-checked, and finally Kevin went to our captain and said, "Sir, I'm pretty sure that we have real contacts, that these are not ghosts in the system based on the upgrade." And because we were the
okay, wait. Let me just make sure that I have this right. So these objects were up almost to outer space, but in our atmosphere. They came down to 80,000 feet. I guess that's unusual because, I mean, how many things are up suborbital? And then it went down to sea level. This is highly unusual?
Well, it's highly unusual, and it's frankly impossible for most of our vehicles that aren't ballistic weapon systems, because to deorbit a craft requires a certain specific set of maneuvers to re-enter the atmosphere. So not only were these appearing beyond where the Aegis radar system could pick them up, they were in space. they were then translating down to an altitude that even our best aircraft don't operate very well at.
Okay, so wait. So when we enter, we have that blackout period where, we're really kind of on fire when we're coming back down in. Mm-hmm. So they didn't enter the same way. They didn't experience those things.
Well, at the time we hadn't yet heard of what were called the 5 observables that came out of a program called ATIP that Luis Elizondo ran. But what we did witness was what was called hypersonic velocity and instantaneous acceleration. Those are 2 of the 5 observables, and they're 2 means of action that we have 0 craft in our arsenal that can do that. So there was nothing about this that matched anything that we understood. And then to have them immediately go to sea level and then kind of make a lazy flight southward, almost as if they were a flock of balloons. This is one of the things that gets the debunkers into it, because they like to cherry pick and say that there were 20 or 30 different things happening at once that conflated to confuse the military that there were UFOs. But that's not the case. Kevin sent a sortie of F-18s out to the area where the radar was picking them up. We were the air defense commander, so our captain had that authority to order that. And Commander David Fravor and his wingman pilot, Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich, made their way out to this area, and they observed an area of water that they said it was roiling. And it was approximately the size of a 737 aircraft, and around it were these Tic Tac-shaped objects that were matte white in color, approximately 30 feet long, with no control surfaces, no means of propulsion, no markings whatsoever, and they were darting around instantaneously like ping pong balls.
So wait, let me see if I understand this. So there's some big object the size of a 737, and these ping pong balls, these Tic Tacs, are circling it. So are they, speculation here, part of propulsion or something, or are they separate aircraft? Or whatever it is. I
hesitate to speculate, but if I were to speculate immediately, I think one of the feelings was that they were either observing this area of water or they were tending to something that was in the water. I can say that I've participated in follow-on investigations with Lou Elizondo down in Mexico, in Ensenada, and off of Guadalupe Island, where the Tic Tacs were witnessed going into the water. And the folks we spoke to down there see these all the time. It's a very interesting situation down there, but what we encountered that week was unlike anything we had ever seen before. Towards the end of the exercise, after the night that the pilots returned with the gun camera footage, before we had seen it on board Princeton, I was out on the port side bridge wing with the port watch, the port watch, at approximately 45 degrees up in the sky at 2,000 feet off the port bow. I saw 5 to 7 lights in a completely clear and cloudless sky. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And these 5 to 7 lights all moved towards the center of the circle of the center of their formation that they were in, and each instantaneously disappeared. I say that they blinked out, but they didn't show any kind of movement or propulsion. This action completely matched what we were seeing on radar and completely matched what the pilots returned with on the gun camera footage. The next morning, when myself and the other chief petty officers in the chief's mess witnessed that video, we were astonished. We knew that immediately what we were looking at. We had the chain of emails that came with it, where the operations officers on the ships were immediately debunking everything. We know what birds look like at sea. We know what balloons look like. We know what other aircraft look like. We know what the lighting configurations are. These things did stuff that we just can't do. And we had the electro-optical data, the eyewitness testimony, and the infrared data to tell us about it, not to mention the radar data.
Chief, I want to make sure that I understand. When you were out on the deck and you were looking up at the night sky about 10 o'clock at night, you see these lights. And when you say they went out or they blinked out, what you're actually saying is that they started to move away at such a speed they were just gone. Is that right?
That's what we speculate. And if we had the radar data to show that moment in time, I believe that that's what the radar data would show. Unfortunately, this is where the water gets muddy. That evening, it's reported that plainclothes officers arrived on board Nimitz and arrived on board Princeton and confiscated the radar data. As of right now, I don't know who that was. It still remains to be seen who has that data, where it ended up in the system, and who it was that had the authority to come out and confiscate that data. A lot of people have asked me, as the Chief Master at Arms, wouldn't you have been aware of who was coming and going from the ship? And unfortunately, no, I wasn't the bag checker or security guy for the oncoming helicopters. That was handled, via our a system of logistics that moves between our ships. So I wouldn't have had to be told about that.
So how did the chain of command handle all of this? Were they surprised? Were they freaked out? Did they report it to the Pentagon? What happens when you see something like this?
Well, during the exercise, it was relatively quiet. There were a handful. Kevin and I, our Senior Chief Day and I, were communicating via telephone line between the bridge and the Combat Information Center. We didn't know what we were dealing with. So rather than alarm people to rumors of UFOs, et cetera, we kept it professional. We had an exercise going on. But when it was clear that this was intervening in our exercise due to the amount of attention we gave it, you can imagine that the ship was a very professional atmosphere. But after we all saw the video, we had an operations and intelligence briefing that evening where I was asked for the first time to post up at the door, just in case anyone coming in had a lapsed security clearance.